Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. This is a very special screening of the new feature documentary, The Donut King. I'm so excited to see that we have literally hundreds of people watching tonight, and that will be very exciting for the filmmakers. We have a live Q&A following the film screening with director, DP, and writer Alice Gu and producer and SCA alumnus José Nuñez. This is offered courtesy of Greenwich Entertainment, and we're going to run the whole film in this webinar. It runs about 98 minutes, and then we'll transition directly into the live Q&A to follow. So I hope that you all enjoy this film as much as I do, and stick around for the Q&A to follow. Thanks.
And I clicked on each one of them one by one, and I was instantly captivated. And I, right then and there, I was like possessed. I was like, I have to do this movie. And I called Jose. Jose and I had been working together in commercials for a number of years. And, you know, it was kind of a big ask. I was like, Jose, I got this crazy idea. I'm like, totally feel free to say no. Like, we've never done this before. No idea really what we're doing, but I want to make a documentary. It's about this guy, the Donut King. And like, I don't know how to do it. We don't have money. And Jose, without any hesitation, he's like, I love it. I'm down. He's like, I totally remember this story from KCRW. He's like, I'm so down.
I'm curious now if you would, just to wrap up the Cambodian donut thread, would you now refer to it as a Cambodian donut?
I do call them Cambodian donuts now, as do I feel like plenty of people. They're like, including, gosh, this was like a review that blew my mind. Joe Morgenstern's review. He actually wrote in there and he said his closing line is like, I'm happy to know that I've been eating Cambodian donuts all these years.
So Jose, tell us, as you know, you guys work together and you're coming on to produce this. Obviously, the big question is, are you going to get the Donut King to participate in this story? What were the logistics for you going forward? Because, you know, you go and find him in Cambodia, so there's obviously a lot.
Yeah. So actually, after that phone call, that was in April, and in June, a couple months later, we were in Cambodia shooting him. And Alice called DK's Donuts in Santa Monica. I think it was probably one of the first donut shops she called, and asked, hey, you know, I'm a filmmaker. I'm looking for this guy, Ted Ngoy. And Meili, who picked up the phone, actually said, oh, you're in luck. That's my great uncle. Let me connect you guys on Facebook. And we were like, okay, we don't know if he's in good health. You know, he's, you know, getting close to his 80, he's hitting 80. We should try to get out there ASAP and shoot him and see what we get. And that's what we did. We cobbled up a couple bucks, and you know, Alice and I flew to Cambodia with the camera in our carry-on, enough clothes for a couple of days, and got out there as soon as we could and started shooting him. And as you could see in the film, he's a delightful man. He's such a, I feel like I have a new grandpa. Like, I just love the guy now. And we had such a great time with him there that came back and started shooting everyone else here over about a year and a half, and then finally made it back to Cambodia again and spent that time. We spent 2 weeks there and traveled all over the country with him.
Wow.
And I think this is fun because, as Jose said, we cobbled together a couple bucks. You know, the camera package was in our carry-on, actually through a grant from ARI, I think from another USC alumnus who gave us the grant. And I mean, we had no money. It was like, so it was kind of cool. We're like, Jose and I were like, okay, it's like going back to film school. Like, this is DIY. We are pushing up our sleeves and we're doing it ourselves. And you know what? It was awesome.
How easy was it to convince him to actually come back to LA?
That was actually a little tricky, I have to say. You know, he didn't say it in so many words, but I said, Ted, I really need you in LA. And he's like, you know, do I really have to? You know, I'll go if you want me to. And I'm like, yes, you have to come, basically. And I think that so much of his hesitation was due to the fact of, as you saw, you know, the drama that played out over his life in California, including with his nearest and dearest to him, you know, his family, his own kids, his ex-wife, and with the Cambodian community. You know, he has a very kind of mixed legacy, and he was persona non grata to a lot of people. You know, there are still people who are still mad at him, you know, and I think that's something that's not really easy to face. But he came, and you know what, I feel like it ended up being actually very healing. You know, I feel like a lot of relationships were mended. His relationship with his kids now is better than ever. His relationship with Christy, you know, they've come to some, you know, some sort of peace with it. So, you know, I'm actually really proud of that moment and that time.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you researched a lot of the component of this that's the history of Cambodia and everything that happened to the families that were persecuted before they left? I mean, was finding archival material difficult? Were you working with materials in Cambodia? Was that easily found here? What was that process like?
It took a village, really, because there's so much, you know, as far as the family's personal archive, there was so little. You know, all of them had the same story. They left with the clothes on their backs, and maybe somebody took a photograph with them, and maybe someone else took a different photograph with them. So it really took me, as far as the family was concerned, was it like, oh yeah, stuff is gone? I'm like, no, I know it's somewhere. Somebody somewhere has something. And I'm like, and they're like, but I'm like, dude, go in the garage, go in the attic, go just look. You've forgotten about it. And it worked. You know, they're like, oh my God, look what I found. And, you know, I found all these different pictures. As far as other, you know, things of historical context, that was a big group effort between our editor, Carol Martori, our assistant editor, Rob, and we had a couple of researchers, me, you know, we were all, you know, it's actually really exciting because we would just email you like, you are not going to believe what I found. Oh my God, there was so much in that discovery period that is actually so magical. And it just, that feeling of finding something that you had no idea existed or that you thought was going to be so incredibly difficult to find. I mean,
was there one thing in particular that just was like the one?
Let's see. There were a couple of photographs that were pretty mind-blowing. I mean, there are photographs that I got from other family members that when I showed to Ted, he said, I've never seen this picture. I remember taking the picture as a boy, but I've never seen it. So there are all these pictures that we found from various different, you know, relatives. You know, it was really, you know, what was special was a lot of Ted's reaction and the other family members. They're like, oh my God. They're like, oh my God, that's Kong and that's so-and-so. You know, they're like looking at people for the first time. That was really incredible. And as far as historic archive, a couple of things that blew our mind. One was President Ford's speech. You know, I wasn't, you know, I didn't hear that the first time around. And hearing that speech for the first time, and that was Carol, our editor, who found it. I mean, I cried. You know, it was so moving and powerful. I still cry when I hear that speech. And another one that was like an oh my God was that little clip of Jerry Brown. So it was like everything that I thought I knew about politics and political parties was flip-flopped, you know, just a few decades back. So yeah, it's the discovery is amazing.
So I can imagine anyone, I mean, like, this film will probably cause a stampede on the DKs in Santa Monica. So I'm kind of curious about your methodology for how you selected the other donut shops to film with, and did that grow from specifically from DKs, and then you got connected to a network, or were you just, did Ted point you to people? How did that work?
You know, I think it was DK's, of course, and then there was Rose Cafe in San Clemente, so that was owned by his sister. So it was those two at first, and then within that, they're like, "Oh, but you should really talk to Adam. He owns DK's in Orange." I was like, "Okay." So I'd kind of follow that, and BC came last. That was, you know, I was asking Ted. I was like, "Ted, who are your childhood friends?" And he said, "Oh, you can talk to Chai Boon." And I talked to them, and I just fell in love with them, that store, that family. And I said, I have to include them too. And then at some point you have to draw the line, because it could be like 20, 30, 40 donut shops that we would have featured. But it all came from, again, the discovery.
So I'm curious if you actually, he does make whatever those, what's the donut that he makes at the end of the film?
I think he was making buttermilk bars.
I'm assuming you guys had some.
Oh my God.
Yeah. They know.
Lots and lots.
How were Ted's skills after all these years?
He still has his touch.
Yep.
Actually have
He still has it, yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't lost his touch.
I really love that that the younger generation are sort of innovating, especially with the donut market in LA having so many like, I guess the sort of the donut festival shows a lot of the kind of hipster donut places that are now, like, you know, whether you're Trejo's Donuts or even Krispy Kreme. But I'm curious if there's how much tension there is to innovate versus how much to just go classic. Is this something that you found any sort of consensus about in the donut community?
I'd say, like, diehard donut people, they're like, no, we go classic OG donuts. Like, we're not going to do any of this like Sidecar or Blue Star. Interestingly enough, we found out that Voodoo Donuts came down from Portland to train with Cambodians.
Oh.
And took their skills back up to Portland. But yeah, you know, I think there's probably a line. There are people who eat like those $6 donuts, and then other ones are like, no, it's OG.
There was one set of donuts in there that looked like the happy foot, sad foot sign. Does that mean anything to you guys?
Do you remember that,
Which one
José?
was that? I'm not sure which one. No. Was it at the Donut Fest?
Silver Lake cult following, like a rotating sign in front of a building. That's
I'm not sure.
the shape of a foot, and it's one side of it's smiling, the other side's frowning. But if you don't know what it is,
oh my God, José! After seeing
yeah,
1,000 times, how do we not know what this happy foot sounds like? All right, we'll get back to you on that one.
So tell us a little bit about the editing process. You know, you're interweaving a lot here: personal history, political history, and then of course, you know, you've got these families outside of Ted's. Like, give us a sense of how you construct that. Was it something that you know, you knew how it needed to be put together, or was there some discovery in post-production that helped it flow?
There was a little bit of both. Carol is such a good collaborator. We went in knowing that we didn't want to tell it in a linear fashion. For whatever reason, we're like, hey, let's do something exciting and different. Let's mix it up. And we reference kind of different, you know, the just things that we liked in different films. And we knew that it was going to be a really tricky, God, we just had to keep it really buttoned up and neat because we had so many different storylines to weave through. But certainly, you know, it's very different from the original first, like, string out assembly rough cut. You know, you're able to see it's like, okay, that idea didn't work. And what things, you know, do work. It's kind of, I feel like the process was like, oh dear God, you know, this isn't good. You know, like that first one is like, okay, do we know what we're doing? And then it's boom, boom, boom. It's like another cut. And then all of a sudden you get that magic cut that is like, oh my God, we've got something here. This is really great. So it's a little bit of both. You go in with a bit of the idea of how you want to jump back and forth in time and story structure. And then in actual execution, you really see what doesn't work and what works. So I hope that answered your question.
What wasn't working?
You know, I think there were certain, it's been so long, but you know, Jose and I, we've seen so many versions. We're like, okay, this is putting.
I think originally we had like a little bit more of food history, American food history, to talk about the donuts. That ended up not fitting well into the story, and so we got rid of that. I mean, things like that we experimented with. I think what was clear from the beginning, though, is that we wanted to tell the story. We wanted to use the donuts as our Trojan horse to really tell a story about the Cambodian history with the genocide and what happened there, and the U.S. involvement in all of that. So, you know, that was clear from the beginning that we wanted to use the donuts as our Trojan horse.
Yeah, or, you know, with so much history, we had to give just enough historical context where I think maybe an early cut, we were like, this isn't for History Channel. Like there's too much here. Like we need just enough. We need to get back to Ted and why we're telling this story. So, you know, there are decisions like that needed to be made.
Tell us a little bit about raising the money to make the film, because it sounds like your first trip out there, you know, was like very independent, like going out and getting this while you can. And then where did it go from there?
Oh, that was a journey.
Yeah, that was a whole journey on itself. So yeah, we you know, our first trip out there, we was self-funded. We came back, we cut a trailer, and then we went out to try to find the funding. And originally we had some people interested in helping us fund the movie. And that ended up, after many like months of conversations, it ended up falling through. By that point, we were already in the edit room, and it was costing a bunch of money every month to get through that. We were shooting whenever we had access to the camera through the RE grant. So they would tell us, hey, you have the camera next month, you can have it for a week, and the following month you can have it for 2 weeks. So we would schedule our shooting around that. And in the meantime, we were trying to raise the funds. You know, when we were in the editing room, I got to the point where I was just like, you know, I think I know enough people in town that I'm just gonna hit everybody I know up for money and just do little bit at a time and kind of get us to the next stage. By that point, I had already had a conversation at Scott Free, and they were like, show us a little bit more, show us a cut, and then maybe we'll come in at that point. But we're not ready to commit to it now. And in doing that, in those conversations, I went to a friend, someone I've known for years, who's an entrepreneur here in LA, with the idea of asking him for $20,000. And he then introduced me to someone else who said, we love what you're doing. We want to invest in the film, but if we do invest, we want to invest in the entire thing. We don't just want to give you $20,000. Tell us how much you need, and we're in.
Mm.
And so that was about a year into after we started shooting, till we finally got out the rest of the funding.
Yeah, we were able to, since it was again like DIY, back to film school, like we did everything on the cheap. And with that ARRI grant and shooting in California, we were able to continue along because we didn't pay ourselves, and we could just do things relatively inexpensively. And yeah, the adventures of, I was like, okay, you'll have the money. And we're like, Rosina's like, great, well, let's float this month of post because we're going to get the money soon. And we paid for that month of post. And we're like, where's the money?
Yeah.
Oh, it came so close, like excruciatingly close. Like Jose's like, we're going to have to, and we were making progress at that point. And he's like, we're going to have to make the decision. We got to pull the plug. And it's like, it was so gut wrenching. And I mean, it's literally the 11th hour that we didn't have to, it was like minutes away from like, we just got to stop.
Yeah.
So we had, I think, over 300 people watch this film live tonight. And so there's obviously very high interest in it. And I'm curious how releasing a film during the pandemic, especially a documentary, how that rollout worked for you guys. It's a shame that we're not, able to watch this on the big screen and have donuts, but but just given the level of interest, compared to also, I run a lot of screenings and this has been incredibly popular. So how has that been going?
That's so cool.
Alice and I come from the world of commercials, and this was our first feature film together and our first feature film period. And we were going to South by Southwest, and we were excited about that. And everything started getting canceled one by one, and we didn't get that. Unfortunately, we didn't get to have that experience of going to. We finally saw the movie in a theater when we had a very small release in Orange County, and we went to the theater in Orange County, and we got to see the movie on a big screen. But yeah, it's been. I think it would have been a totally different experience for us. If we would have been able to go to all the film festivals and watch it with an audience and all that,
I know we're really missing that experience.
I know we're getting a ton of questions, so I want to kick it to the audience in a second, but I'm curious if the businesses themselves are doing well right now, because I feel like I would gladly go to DK's Donuts, in this period of time. I need to sit inside and eat the donut there. So have they been doing okay?
Well, I have something to say. So BC Donuts in Pasadena, for anyone who's watching and is interested, Friday is the last day that the original owners will be there. So Chai Boon, whom we love so much, unfortunately his health is really declining, and his daughters who've been running the shop, Linda, between the pandemic and having to homeschool 2 kids, run the donut shop, worry about her father's health, she's like, I cried so many tears, but we have to sell the shop. And so they just posted on Instagram yesterday, they said the original owners will be here for the last time between like 11 and 1 to say bye to their customers that we love so much. So that's BC Donuts. But I know all of them, it hasn't been easy. Their business is about, 30%, every one of them, their business is about 30% of what it usually is. So it hasn't been easy for the shops.
Well, hopefully this film will help to drive people back to the donuts as soon as they can.
I hope so.
Hope so, yeah.
So, okay, so I'm gonna go through some of these questions and invite people to ask the questions live. So I just need to very quickly have a look, because there's also a lot of comments in here too, that are more just sort of for your benefit. So, okay, I'm gonna invite over Elia Albert to start, and then And then I'll put kind of a running order of who will go out to. Now, for those of you out there that asked questions, when I bring you over, you don't have to turn on your camera. We'd love to see you, but if you have your access to your mic, that's just, if you're not camera ready, that's totally fine. So let's go to Ilya. And then I might just kind of cue things up, bringing some people over in anticipation of the next question.
Hi there. Hi, Alice. Hi, Jose. Hello. Just a quick thing, though. I'm actually, I do a blog on Instagram called The Duke of Donuts, and I do my own thing where I'm trying to find about the history of the donut, like where it all started and where it is now and what are the cultural significances of it and how much it's had an impact on immigration as well, not just in Cambodians, but other types of immigrants. But aside from that, I was really pleased to see your film. I absolutely adored it. I loved it. I saw a lot of familiar faces just from people that I've seen in my own little travels around the donut shops. And I was just kind of curious regarding the film, was it difficult for you to sit Ted down and really talk about the darker aspects of his life? Because I know for anybody, even myself, it's hard to talk about those really sensitive topics, and especially with his family as well. What was the process like with that when you spoke with him and his family?
It took some building up of trust and a lot of communication, but right from the get-go, I was pretty straight with him, and I said, Ted, the reason why I love your story is because you are a complex man, and it's if it's just the story of a saint, maybe it's not so relatable, but you're flawed. You made mistakes. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I want to know all of it. I want to talk about all of it. I apologize in advance if I'm going to offend you, but I'm going to ask you some challenging questions. Are you up for that? And he said, yes. He's like, I have nothing to hide. Ask me anything. So, he was very much a wonderful participant. And I'm so delighted to hear about your Duke of Donuts and the donut history. I think Jose had mentioned, we had so much that we needed to squeeze into, 90 plus minutes. We did do a whole interview with a food and donut historian. We did go into the history of the donut, which I found so fascinating. That's a documentary all in and of itself. The donut, absolutely 100%, besides Cambodians, is a completely international immigrant food. There's 96% of Americans love donuts. I think that would probably hold true for 96% of the world, because every culture in the world has some sort of fried dough comfort food. And I think that's why it has the universal appeal.
Absolutely. And it's a snack that people can enjoy at all hours of the day. That's the other thing too, a lot of people don't think about.
This is true.
Well, thank you so much, both of you. I really appreciate you answering my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's go out to Imelda. Oops. Sorry. And I'll bring over Scott as well. And Scott, just keep your camera off until Imelda's question has been answered, just so that we can save a little bit of time on moving people over.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi, Imelda.
Hi. Oh my God, I loved that film, and I live not too far from BC Donuts, so I'm very sad to hear that. But I was really fascinated by the story of Ted and Christy, and I thought it was so sweet that in the midst of war and entrepreneurship and politics, there's this emerging love story. So I was sad that they ended up getting divorced. Any chance for reconciliation, and what are they each up to now?
I think, unfortunately, a reconciliation is not going to be happening. I will say, though, although Christy is now remarried and Ted is also remarried now, and I think Jose will agree with me after spending all this time with Ted, is that Christy is and was the love of his life. And probably his biggest regret in the entire world is losing Christy.
Oh, very sad.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, even when you visit him at his home to now, he still has pictures of her up in his house with his new wife, but he's got almost a little altar to her at his house in Cambodia.
Oh, okay. So he's in Cambodia and Christy's here in the United States.
She's here in Orange County, California, and he's in Cambodia. But you know, one of the wonderful things about making this movie is that they reconnected, Christy and Ted, and I think they're on friendly terms now, where before this it had been years since they had last spoken to each other.
Yep.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Well, thank you so much. It's a beautiful film.
Thank you, Melda.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
Okay, do we have Scott?
Howdy.
Oh,
Hey, Scott.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. When I saw it was about donuts, I got all excited. And when I watched, I actually puddled up. So congratulations. And I imagine it had a lot to do with the limited amount of archival material. But at what point did you decide that animation would be a route that would help? Because it worked really well.
Thank you, and you are correct. It was because we didn't have the archive to support the story. So we decided pretty early on that was going to be the tool that we were going to use to fill in. And it was very important to us to find a Cambodian artist. And we found an artist by the name of Andrew Hem, who, you know, I was loosely familiar with before. You know, fairly, you know, pretty successful artist. If you judge by Instagram followers, you know, he's got like 90,000 and people around the world know him. And it was the fun task of kind of cold calling him, cold DMing him is actually what I did. And asked him if he wanted to do a lot of work for very little money, which is always an interesting request to make. And to my surprise, he said yes. And he said, you know, my family knew Ted's family. I was a donut kid. I worked in my parents' donut shop. It's the only job I ever had before I went to Art Center. And so I'm totally interested and I'll do it. So it became even more meaningful, not only that he was Cambodian, but he actually himself was a donut kid, the kid of refugees who went on to go to one of the best art schools in the world. I mean, I think it's just a testament to the American dream.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott.
thanks. Okay, Andrew, if you're out there.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, like just first off, like I really enjoyed that. Like it really just broadened my perspective on donut shops like around like LA. Like there's this place like I go to and like I never really considered that Cambodian history could be a part of like just the donut. And I wanted to ask Alice, did your nanny see the documentary and what did she think of it?
She did see the documentary. Unfortunately, we're not working with that nanny anymore, though we were on good terms. So she told me that she loved it, but I did not get to see it in the same room with her. But I'm forever grateful to that nanny.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Steve.
Hello, hello, and thank you for having me. I'd just like to preface by saying that for the last 10 years, I've taught a course in documentary filmmaking at Cal State Sacramento. And, you know, in that capacity, I have to watch a lot of films. And I just wanted to say that this is one of the best documentaries I've seen in years. I really, really liked it. I'm going to tell you why. I'll make a quick list of it. Some of them have already been mentioned. First of all, you know, I liked what you said, Jose. It's almost like a Trojan horse about these, you know, the donuts themselves, But to me, it really was it started with Ted's story, which is very, very interesting and very deep. And then it becomes a love story, as Emil has said, you know, what happens to you know, Ted and his wife. But past that, you know, it told me something about the Cambodian community too, and the way that they band together and this one enterprise, and how they look after each other. Then it's a political story of Cambodia, as you said. You know, you've got all these things wrapped into one. But once again, it doesn't stop there. There's the dangers of addiction and gambling, and what that can do to your life and what it can do to others. And then finally, while watching the film, I was eating dinner with my wife and we had it on in the background. And afterwards, one of the things that we said, you know what? I don't think most Americans really, really appreciate how lucky they were to be born here in this country, compared to a lot of people coming over here and what the country means to them. And I think that's really important, especially in this time of you know, people with xenophobia and all that, and talking about immigration. I think this film has so many things wrapped up into it, and most documentaries don't. You know, they'll have one or two subjects that they'll continue to work on and look at. But you guys did a wonderful job of bringing all this together. And having said that, if there's any way possible, I'd like to share this film with my class next semester. And if it's possible, if you have the time and the desire, to Alice and Jose, I'd like to invite you as a Zoom guest with the class after showing the film, if that can happen. But once again, I'd like to thank you for an excellent film and an excellent experience.
Wow.
Well,
Thank you.
humbled,
Yeah.
really humbled. And I mean, I think I speak for Jose and I, we would be honored for you to share this with your students. That's just tremendous.
All right, thank you and good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you.
All right, so Steve, get in touch with me and I'll make sure that you all have a way of communicating.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay, so let's see. Let's go out to Kat next. And then I'll also bring over Debbie, and Debbie, just keep your camera off until we're ready for you.
Hi there. I'm actually nervous because it's like, oh, my question's being taken. And like, I really love the documentary because it like resonated with my friend who has a family donut shop in Orange County. And I was like, I saw a quick little cameo of it. And I was like, and she's like, can you get screenshotted? I was like, I wish I can, but I can't pause it. And it's like when you were saying with BC donuts, they're really simple donuts, not like the very like fancy donuts. And you know, they're kind of having that struggle right now in in Fullerton, but they're surviving. And I'm just a little shaken because like, oh my gosh, my question's being answered, and plus I've been being picked for this. But but I wanted to know, I think Melda like was asked that question about what's Ted up to. And also, I think that's it. That's my only question, but I just really wanted to really give that compliment because my friend owns a donut shop and it's a very small mom and pop shop. So
It's wonderful.
That's so awesome, Kat.
Yeah, and you know, hopefully your friend watches it, and if he or she hasn't had an opportunity to talk to their parents about the history of what the things their parents went through, you know, one of the things we discovered in talking to the younger generation is that they don't know what their parents went through when they were in leaving Cambodia, because it was either too painful for their parents to talk to their kids about it, or they just, you know, were never curious. They had heard about you know, the Khmer Rouge or something, but they didn't know the history, and they don't know what the struggles and the pain that their parents went through escaping Cambodia, coming to the US as refugees and starting these businesses. So you know, I think it's great that this new generation learns about the history of what their parents went through.
Yeah, we found out, you know, interviewing Chris Combe, Ted's youngest son. He knew nothing. He found out about how his parents met through an LA Times article. I mean, they were too busy working, or, you know, kind of culturally Asian people aren't like, hey, let's sit by the fire and I'm going to tell you, you know, all these stories. You know, that's, you know, not a typical, you know, family landscape thing for Asian families. But I think also it's painful, and it's painful for them to talk about. A lot of them, they're like, look, this is a new beginning. Our kids are American. They don't need to know this kind of stuff. But I think it's actually quite the opposite. I think we need to know where we come from, and, you know, whether you're Asian, Cambodian, Colombian, Iranian, Mexican, you know, whatever, or even Polish, Italian, you know, ask questions. How did you guys come here? How did grandma, grandpa get here? You know, our editor, who is Italian American, she's like, I totally relate to this. She's like, my grandparents came here from Italy, Ellis Island, and started with 2 produce carts in Manhattan. You know, you got to start somewhere. They were like just peddling produce, and now they have a farm, you know. But it's everybody, unless you're a certain group of people in the United States, every person has an immigrant lineage.
Well, I really enjoyed the documentary, and then I really would want to like give like a shout out to my friend's donut shop, because during these times of COVID, it's a very simple donut shop. It's not like Dunkin' Donuts. It's what really was so sad is like when COVID hit, like all of their customers are commuters, and you know, and so like for me, I kind of like did something special for her to like create like a social media to get like awareness about these mom and pop shop donuts. So if anyone is in Orange County, and I saw it in the documentary, it's Sweeto Donuts in Fullerton, and also support your mom and pop donut shops during these times. So, and it's such a great documentary. So I really appreciate it. And it just
Give us the name again. Sweeto?
Sweeto Donuts.
What's the do you know the intersection?
It's in Fullerton. So if you just look up Sweeto Donuts Fullerton, it's the first thing you'll probably see.
Amazing.
That is so cool. Good eye, Kat. I'm so happy you saw that.
Thank you. And on to the next. I'm so nervous.
Thanks, Kat.
Thank you.
Okay, Natasha.
Hi. Gosh, I'm really nervous now too. But I really loved the movie. It was really great, and I cried, and it was just really emotional, and it was just really good. But I have kind of a question about the American dream, because you know, I just feel like in these times, I don't know if this American dream is still alive. And I feel like in your film, you depict this really, you know, amazing, beautiful American dream. And it's a beautiful story, but I was just wondering if you had any like reservations about depicting this dream that, you know, maybe it's a lie, like, you know, does it exist anymore? And I just wanted to ask you, like, personally, do you guys still think that this American dream is a reality, or is it a 1 in a million thing?
Well, that was something that we thought about going into making this film. You know, my parents came here in pursuit of the American dream. I think Jose's parents came here in pursuit of the American dream. And I know that life in these times, it just seems so much harder and so challenging. And you know, when we started this film, I think it's almost 3 years ago at this point, you know, this may sound really, you know, kind of silly, but there was so much hate and negativity and things are hard. And I really wanted to share a message of a little bit of hope and positivity and optimism. You know, I think if you hear messages of despair all the time, I think collectively in our subconscious, it's like, oh man, like we'll never get ahead. Things are so hard. And if you see this story about this guy came from a poor village where he didn't even have shoes and food to eat. And the unlikely probability that this kid makes it halfway across the world, shakes hands with 4 US presidents. I mean, I was born here with everything at my disposal, and I haven't shaken hands with 1 US president. And as far as if it's relevant today, I think that although it is a different time and things may be harder, I still hear stories. I have actually a pretty new friend I just met fairly recently, and his name is Fadi. He came here from Egypt a few years ago. And he's like, what is all the fuss and why is everyone complaining? This is the greatest country in the world. So I think a lot of it is perspective, right? Like he comes here and he's like, we're safe. There's food, there's water. You know, it's pretty easy to get a car or have a job. So I think it's really perspective, and depending on what his opportunities were in Egypt, he's like, I wouldn't have had much of any opportunity in Egypt. So though it may be a little bit different and it may seem a little harder, and maybe in reality it is harder, I do believe in I do believe in it. I believe that it's still alive and well.
Definitely. I think it is, you know, like Alice said, my parents, you know, my parents immigrated to the United States from Colombia in the mid 80s. And, you know, we made this film 3 years ago. And that's part of living the American dream for me, is that here we are, you know, I went to USC film school. Here I am showing the film that's at USC. I mean, I think the American dream is definitely still alive, and there's probably somebody coming into this country today who in a few years will be a success story. And like Ali said earlier, we wanted to showcase someone. We wanted to showcase what could happen if someone's given a chance at that dream, you know. So
absolutely, really interesting. Thank you. I just wanted to hear your perspectives on it.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. It's great.
Yeah.
Oops. Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks for sharing the story. First, I just thought, wow, this is my story exactly. Except my parents didn't have a donut shop. They actually had a Chinese restaurant, but they're from Cambodia. They are Chinese. They just didn't sell donuts. They sold fried, you know, orange chicken and fried rice. But after thinking about it for a while, I was talking to my friend, Roby, who's actually the one that invited me to this. And he said, my family had a push cart in New York and a hardware store in Chicago. So I feel like this resonates so much with everyone, all immigrants. And it's so relevant now because people they're not thinking about all the hard work and what does this country represent. It's a bunch of hardworking immigrants that came so they could have a better life. So thank you so much. This really told my story. I felt like, wow, I've never seen it from this perspective. We have really something to be proud about. I grew up peeling shrimp and cutting carrots and taking money behind the counter since I was, you know, old enough to walk and hold a knife. So it was really special to me. So thank you for telling that, because it's really important, changed my perspective. I want to show it to my mom and dad so they can see this documentary that's essentially about them. I mean, we never became millionaires, but you know, we're pretty close. So it was really nice. So thank you for telling our story.
Judy,
Oh,
that is
thank you.
so awesome. Somebody who had reached out a while back on socials, on our Instagram, had said, "Oh my God, this is my story. Just sub Thai noodle shop for donut shop. And this is my family." So it's exactly what you're saying. It doesn't have to be donut shop. That can be interchangeable with, again, that push cart or a Chinese restaurant or Thai noodles or pupusas, or whatever it is. I feel like this is something that it's a story that hasn't been told, and what I've heard from other people in the Cambodian community who, let's say they were kids and they're like, it's maybe not so glamorous. Oh yeah, my parents had a donut shop. But now they're so proud of it. They're like, this is something to be celebrated. This is so cool. Like somebody actually paid attention and told the story. I'm like, I never in a million years did I think that I'd ever see Cambodian donut shops, in a Hollywood movie. And that is something that I did not think when we started this journey together, Jose, but those kinds of comments and the ones from you, Judy, have been by far the most rewarding. So
I hope we can do a spin-off and do like a Humans of New York version of, the immigrants of the US and all their businesses.
It's a good idea. Thanks, Judy.
Thank you.
Yeah. What's your parents' restaurant?
Oh, they sold it and actually
Okay.
back to Cambodia, but it's called Chinatown Express and it was on Florence and Broadway. So it's pretty close to USC.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, that's so awesome. Thank you, Judy.
Thanks. Okay, so I'm bringing over Raj. Hello, sir.
Congratulations. Thank you, Alex, for treating us today. Tonight is your treat. And thank you, Jose and Alice. Really enjoyed the documentary. I never knew all this industry totally in depth. I know now the industry. And really, they are hardworking community. Same like me, all immigrants came in the same story. I'm more curious, is that donut is still popular in Cambodia? And is it a big industry?
No, not in Cambodia, really. I mean, you still have the original Cambodian donut, but there aren't many donut shops in Cambodia.
Okay, and also, did you ever thought about covering? I don't know whether I missed in the beginning part or whether you had a coverage or not about the Randy's Donut here in LA, near LAX. The big donut sign.
Yeah.
It visually makes it into the film. Randy's is not a Cambodian-owned donut shop.
I know, but I was just curious because Donut King just brings the name of that attention of that shop all the time. But really, yeah,
What
it's
about the donut hole?
Yes.
Is that Cambodian?
Donut hole, I believe, is Cambodian. The one in
You drive through.
Yes.
We drove through. Yeah, I know they're Asian. I don't know if they were Cambodian, but I know they were Asian.
But really enjoyed the film. Thank you for showing us and sharing, and definitely enjoyed it. Love to see in the theater sometime.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank you.
I want to just quickly ask a couple of these that were just written for me to ask. First of all, how can people see the movie now? So if they're recommending it, what's the best? What's the best way for them to rent it or share it?
We are on iTunes, so Apple TV, Amazon Prime Video, Google Play, YouTube, and I believe, Jose, I'm not sure, for a while, if you wanted to still support local cinema, we were streaming off of Laemmle, the Laemmle theaters. And
Laemmle theaters.
But those are, kind of the bigger places to stream and rent, and maybe Laemmle.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you about that amazing song at the end, but there was a larger question about the music. So maybe we can all kind of wrap it up into one. The music, and I'm just reading the question here. The music was a large component to making the film feel very contemporary and brought a lot of energy. What type of direction did you provide to Dan Wilcox and Liza Richardson from KCRW to find the right music to fit the story and vibe you were going for?
The music was so fun. So given that the subject was donuts and that we wanted to have this, kind of Trojan horse component to it, we're like, well, donuts are super pop, and what's really fun and poppy, and both Jose and I are hip hop heads. So we're like, let's find donut tracks that are hip hop. So that was one, direction that we moved in. As far as original music, we worked with another USC alumnus, Peter Lauritsen. He composed our score. I believe Peter's dad is a professor at USC as well. So Peter, shout out to him, did just an incredible job, and we pulled musical references that we wanted for that. As for, I just wanted to say a couple of tracks, like our opening track, which was Wu-Tang Clan and Cream, which was near impossible to get. Maybe Jose, you'll remember that phone call. I'm like, Jose, and he's like, what? Don't kill me. What? I'm like, we have to have Wu-Tang Clan. I'm like, we have to get this track, Cream. I know this track costs more than the entire budget of our entire documentary. But a girl's got to, you know what? The American dream is alive and well because I got that track.
Yep.
And it took a lot of cajoling, but it was so fun. And then we wanted to put one piece of this kind of like the Cambodian, call it like kind of like the surf rock or the Cambodian agogo, that music that was very contemporary of that period. And that was over the cronut scene.
Does Ted make donuts in Cambodia?
No, he's not. It's funny. He's not in the donut business. None of his family's in the donut business. They're completely separated from that business now. No.
Okay, one last one. And the question is, how did Ridley Scott become involved? How was he approached? And maybe I can add to that. What kind of feedback did you get from him?
Ridley, well, I the background is that I have a working relationship in the commercial side of his company. And so when we was set off to make the movie, I approached them with it. And not, like I said, not until we had our first cut did they really become interested. And the reason is because Ridley really relates to the story, because he is, when he came to the US, he had nothing and he made his life here, and he was able to fulfill his American dream, and he connected to the story. And it's funny, when we first approached them, Scott Free was interested and they said, but we want to help you out. We want to participate in the movie, but you can't use Ridley's name. He said, okay, that's fine. But then when he watched the film, I guess he called him up and he said, I love it. You guys can use my name. And, he's obviously he's a filmmaker I admire. And I loved hearing that he really related to the immigrant story, and he really connected with it.
I noticed in the special thank yous that you gave a thanks to Joe Piscopo. Is that Joe Piscopo?
Okay, funny story. Do you have time to get into like a
great story? Yeah.
So Joe Piscopo, it is not the football player, or am I remembering that correct? The football or athlete.
Speaking of the SNL, the comedian.
It's not Joe Piscopo. He was a real estate agent.
Oh, okay.
So for about a year and a half, the mansion scene where Ted is in his mansion, for a year and a half, I'm like, how am I going to get into that mansion or outside of that? I need a shot of that mansion. And it's
in a gated community, so you can't have access to it.
Yeah. You can. I tried to call every influential person I knew in Orange County, and they're like, these communities are gated for a reason, to keep people out. And it was the day before Ted was going to leave to go back to Cambodia. And I think off the cuff, I spoke to one of his sons and I said, God, I wish I could just shoot that mansion. It's like the thing that we're missing. And he says, oh, if you have 3.2 million, you could just buy it. It's on the market. And I was like, stop. Did you just tell me that it's on the market? I'm like, so I went to Redfin. I scheduled a tour, and the Redfin agent was Joe Piscopo.
Oh, wow.
And Joe Piscopo, I schedule a tour and I'm like, all right, how am I going to do this? Do I go in with a red? I mean, literally, I'm running through all these scenarios. I'm like, all right, do I take Ted, pretend that I'm a crazy rich Asian and Ted is my dad? Or do I pretend I'm an influencer so someone follows us with a camera wherever we go? I'm trying to think of all these different schemes. And Joe Piscopo calls me and says, great, Alice. So can I get your proof of funds and a pre-qualification letter? I'm like, for a $3.2 million loan? I'm like, totally don't have that. And so I'm like, think fast, think fast, think fast. I'm like, what can I spin? And I said, Joe, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not going to buy the house. I have no interest in buying the house. This is what I'm up to. This movie, it's my dream, blah, blah, blah. And Joe pauses and he says, you know what? That's so incredible. I'm totally going to help you. I don't need it. I'm going to do it for free. I don't need any money. I just really want to help you. And he did.
Oh, that's so cool. Hopefully it's sold for asking price or more.
That's right.
Okay, very last question. This one is, how was Daewon Song, the skateboarder, brought into the movie? Where did the idea come from, and how was the process working for him? Wait, sorry, was the process working from him?
Daewon Song, one of the greatest of all time, skaters, old school, and self-professed donut addict. And it kind of all tied into the Trojan horse, the Southern California image. What's more Southern California than surfing and skateboards, and this donut addict? And it was, this little fun that's for people with a sharp eye. I'm glad that you caught that. I wanted Daewon, and that was also a months-long pursuit of stalking him and calling every single person I know who may have known him. And I finally got through, and he said, I would love to participate. And God, I'm forever grateful. I was like, okay, so this is our landscape. I think José actually came up with, we're like, how do we incorporate Daewon? He's like, wouldn't it be sick if he skates through LA? And we're like, yes, he should be skating through different donut, different to find his donut. And that became the intro sequence.
This has been really such a fun discussion, and it was really one of those movies that when I watched it, I might come and check out pieces of it again right before the Q&A, but I just sat myself right back down and loved every minute of it again.
Alex,
thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you both, and hopefully we'll get to have you guys on campus at some point, and
Yes.
bring the donuts. Oh, I did want to ask, favorite donut?
Chocolate donut. I gotta stick with the classic.
Really? I didn't think it'd be chocolate after all this time. That's surprising.
Yeah.
I like a classic glazed and maple bar. But during the making, I kind of became a little bit of a convert to these buttermilk bars.
Or the O-Nut at DK's. I mean, that thing is heavenly. I don't even know how to describe it. It's amazing.
Okay, here's a pro tip: is the maple bars come out around 9 p.m.
Say that again?
The buttermilk bars come out at DK's around 9 p.m. every day. So if you can time it, that you get them
just in time.
Yeah.
On the west side.
It's kind of an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much. And best wishes for the movie. And hopefully we'll get to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, USC. Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Good night.